I can't live with myself. You've most likely heard that phrase before. You may have even used it before. If you did, there must be two of you. I, the you, and the self you cannot live with. The question, therefore, is who is the you and who is the self you cannot live with? Before we answer that question, we invite you first to a sacred journey into silence. The nature of spiritual awakening is frequently misunderstood. Some believe seeing visions of God or celestial beings is in itself a spiritual awakening. For others, life seems to lack purpose and doesn't make sense anymore. Some even consider religion to be the opium of the people, and God is nothing more than the figment of the human mind.
Even those who say religion is an opium for the people, even they, everyone on this earth has had some spiritual experience. I have observed this and found it. When you give it a name, give it a form, give it a ritual, it is an expression of beauty. The same way we have so many other expressions of love in our relationships. When those forms and rituals become so systematized that they become an orthodoxy and they become stiff, then it becomes an opium. Any beautiful flower, you can extract things from it that are harmful to people, and that has happened to many experiences of love, and it has happened also to the spiritual experience. But in the purity of the spiritual experience, there is no opium, I assure you. And if people look back into their own lives, there have been moments of absolute stillness where some all-pervading presence was felt, but they did not want to give it a name and they denied it. That is why they call it an opium.
Toronto is one of the great centers of interfaith activity, where the different faiths, the different religions come together. But today is even more than that. It's what we call interspiritual. We get an opportunity to experience the spiritual practices of each of the other faiths, of the all spiritual traditions together.
One thing that joins all the prophets and all the founders of religions is that they have always spent some time in solitude, in a cave. Prophet Muhammad spent his time in a cave where he received so many revelations. Zarathustra, Zoroaster spent 10 years sitting in a cave. The yogis of India sit in a cave, place of stillness where there is no distraction from outside. Jesus went out into the place of solitude, went to the mountaintop, and so on. And in those moments when there are no worldly distractions, the mind reaches beyond itself within and experiences something, whatever name you want to give it. So in whichever language they were speaking at that time, whichever people they were speaking to, in their language they gave that something a name. So now people are fighting over the name, but not over the actual object of that experience.
How is it that as part of a floating mass of wisdom, the people of all religions tell parables and stories that parallel each other? One claiming it to be Hindu, another claiming it's Sufi, or Buddhist, or Christian? Who decreed that people of all faiths should kneel or bow to the presence of divinity? How is it that ringing a bell, saying grace before meals, incense burning, and countless common similar acts are observed by the adherents of all religions?
If you actually observe the origin of the practices that are so near and dear to your own religious life, and where those practices have arisen from, you will come to the unifying stream. See, for example, yesterday we observed the Islamic prostration. Now, it is exactly the same prostration that you see the Buddhists doing all over China and Korea and Japan. It is the same prostration that the Hindus do in their temples, and it is also one of the major yoga postures. But someone says, this is the Islamic prostration. No, this is the Buddhist prostration. No, it is like saying, this is an Islamic eye. No, this is a Hindu eye. No, this is a Christian breath. So there are these similitudes and sameness of experience and expression, because somewhere the origin of all religion, and here I'm not using plural, origin of all religion is in the experience of infinity, and it has to express itself some way. See, for example, the Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, at least those three, they pray with their hand before the heart. Okay, they join the hands. The Muslim places the hands in front of the heart and opens them, but joins them, looks up. Everyone in prayer at some point looks up. See? So something inside each one of us has moved us, or inside the founder of each one of these religions has moved them to find the same expressions. See, we pay homage, we place our hand on our heart. This is a universal gesture. It is not a Christian gesture, it's not a Hindu gesture, it's not an Islamic gesture, it is a basic human gesture, but we call it the Islamic, the Christian, the Hindu, the Buddhist. See, in the Christian Bible, God has shown himself in so many forms, sometimes from a cloud, sometimes in the form of an angel, you know. So God shows himself in many, many forms and expresses himself through us in similitude of forms.
Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
The purpose of these meditations is to enable the disciple or the initiate to build a strong connection to three truths. The first truth being the presence of the Master. The second being that of the Master of Masters in the Islamic and the Sufi tradition, the Ishmaelite prophet Muhammad. And the third being to enable the disciple to then enter into the presence of God and enter into the union with God Almighty.
There, the time divisions vanish. and the past and the future cease, and there remains only a now, which is not a micro-miniaturization of time. It is like a gateway into infinity. And for that infinity, you have to pass through that point of total concentration. See? The nukta of the Sufis.
Yeah.
You know, in India, the Sufi teachers in Urdu say, nukte ke farak se khuda juda ho jata hai. You know, by shifting the space of the nukta, the point, khuda, God, becomes juda, separated from us. Because when you put the point on top, it is khuda. And when you put the point below, it's juda.
Yeah.
The point on top is the union. The point below is separation.
Yeah.
See? So this teaching of coming to a very central point through which we enter infinity, okay, that is the point of experience.
Om Samidagnim Duvasyata Vritare Bodhayataditim Asmin Vyajohodana.
We still do things that we have been advised to do to express our faith. Even a person who says, I don't believe in God, but shakes hands, meaning that he emphasizes a unity between you and me.
Yeah.
We do not interpret it in that sense because we are doing it just like a ritual. Okay? The whole point between experiential religion and religion that requires blind faith is this: blind faith leads to violence. But if you understand that God is there to be experienced personally, then you have true religion. And unfortunately, the priests of all religions are often, not always, failing people to bring to that personal experience of the presence. When people come to that presence is nameless. You say, I cannot describe it. No. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell, coming back from the moon, on the way had some mystical experience.
Yeah.
And he came down and he abandoned his career. He's quite old now, and established an institute for the study of consciousness.
Yeah.
Because he could not understand what was this experience of transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are working there trying to name it, but naming will not work, because naming will become another religion. When we really begin to emphasize the name, the form, and we forget the pathway to personal interior experience of divinity, that is where we go wrong. Speaking in the language of a mystic, all consciousness in the universe is a vast ocean, a continuum. Okay? And in this vast ocean, there are waves of consciousness. You are one wave, I am another wave. Among your listeners, if there are right now 50,000 people listening to this or viewing this, there are 50,000 waves in that consciousness. And imagine that at this time, all those 50,000 are listening to the same word and feeling the same response. When one wave of divine consciousness, like yourself and I, realize that we are two waves in the ocean that are touching each other, that's called love. Divine love of a man or woman of prayer, one point is total selflessness. That love does not think of oneself, only thinks of the other, the way the mother thinks only of the baby. And when we stop thinking of ourselves, people say, well, no, I am an individual, I want to remain an individual, I want to maintain my individuality. And then they suffer from such loneliness. And they complain about that loneliness. It's such a disease, social disease nowadays. On one hand, individualism, and on the other hand, loneliness.
Swami Veda emphasizes that subtle unifying streams are experienced in interfaith and interethnic trust, even in times of genocidal strife, and that the areas and periods of peace and cooperation among faiths in history are far greater than the areas and periods of war.
Last night, how many families had a quiet dinner at home in Toronto?
I don't know.
Okay, whatever. So many million.
Yeah.
Okay. One or two families had a quarrel. They shouted at each other. The neighbors called the police. It got into the newspapers.
Yeah.
But so many million people had a quiet, peaceful dinner at home. It was not published as a news headlines.
Yeah.
But there was more love last night on the dinner tables of Toronto.
Yeah.
See,
I love and obey. Oh, luminous four letters so pure, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
this unity is actually manifest everywhere. We are not recognizing it. Okay, the Christians may condemn the Jews, right? The Jews may fear a Christian attack, or whatever that's been going on in the history of Europe for so many centuries, all right? But now take, for example, here in North America, how many Christians have sent Hanukkah greetings to the Jews? How many Jews have sent Christmas greeting to the Christians? That is where the unity is, unspoken unity. One of the points I have made in this little booklet, Unifying Streams, is that the theologians would argue, and the armies will fight, and militias will fight, but people at their level, they extend a hand of friendship to their neighbor of another religion and slowly begin to adopt their customs. The Christian priest may condemn all those Hindu and Buddhist pagans and all those so-called violent Muslims and so forth. But the Catholic priest and the Muslim devotee and the Hindu devotee and the Buddhist devotee in Seoul, Korea, the Hindu devotee in New Delhi or wherever, and the Catholic devotee in town of Assisi or in the Vatican, see, or the Muslim devotee wherever he is in Cairo, you see, all of them are lighting incense
Yeah.
They don't say, I'm not going to light incense anymore because Muslims light it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to light a candle because the Jews are doing it.
Yeah.
So the unity is present. It is only waiting to be recognized.
Life is indifferent to human experience, for its only concern is the disposal of time. In confined space with an exit called death, to new life, beyond all change, where the mulberry tree is ever in fruit, and divine love is never in dispute.
There is no such thing as death. Death is the biggest myth. Because I, the spiritual self, am immortal. I always existed in the bosom of divinity and shall always exist in the bosom of divinity. Okay. In this life I came as a wave. The wave subsided, but the energy continued and gave rise to another wave.
Yeah.
Now, if you have read Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, somewhat he has described that. See, so to me, truly, there's no recognition of such thing as death. One death that I seek is death of my own ego. Jesus says, unless you die to yourself, you will not reach immortality. No. And the other is that at the moment of my dying, my death should be a source of peace and inspiration to others. That I may live a life, my interior life, my mental life, in such a way that when it is time for this particular wave to subside, whoever I look at feels that there is a light from God. That is the kind of death I would like to die, and my life is dedicated to that. See? And so many times the prophets, the gurus, the peers, the yogis, the mystic masters have passed on their power to their disciples through their eyes in their last glance.
Yeah.
Because at that time, all the power is so concentrated before migrating. It has packed its baggage. And that power of concentration goes into the disciple. That is the death to aspire for.
Whatever we fill our minds with, that is what we become. Our pleasantness or unpleasantness, our happiness or suffering, success or failure is not created by those others whom we blame. It is of our own doing.
Whatever thoughts I'm sharing, they come not as a result of thinking rationally. They do not come from my logia. They come from moments of meditation. In moments of absolute stillness and silence, something flashes. Then that what flashes in a microsecond may take a whole lifetime to pass on as a message. Seek that experience.
Although this episode is the end of the 4-program series, it is not, however, the end of the journey.
You started with asking about breath from the Quran, so we close with that breath. God bless you. So many thanks. I'm so happy to meet
Thank you so much.
Okay.
We are so to be very, very proud to be able to do this interview with you.